We got that music going again, and I am building something. I'm following up on a video I started a while ago where I was cutting down some trees and turning them into lumber. I'm building a 4x8 hoop house for my garden to get the soil warmed up. And I'm just using some trees, some dead trees from the backyard. If you don't have that resource, just get some 2x3. I got some other videos on how I shaped them and sort of worked them into shape. Well, what I'm showing you here is how you build something like this if you've got uneven lumber that's inconsistently shaped, right? The main thing is that everything is on the same plane on at least one side. So you'll notice the bottom, see it goes a little bit below profile on the bottom, but it's flush on the top. See how it's flush on the top, and then you look underneath and it extends a little bit beyond, right? So the main thing is that one side, the top, is all consistent, okay? Because the bottom doesn't matter so much. You can jam hay or leaves or whatever and fill in the cracks to get a reasonable. See how it's way off there, right? So that's the main thing. Step one, if you're using uneven pieces of wood like that, yeah, I could have worked way harder to shape everything perfectly, but why bother? You don't need to. And actually, the more material you leave on the tree or the wood, just the longer it's going to last, right? It's just got that much more bulk. Of course, that makes it a bit heavier, but this isn't too heavy. This, might have weighed 30 pounds when I got it together. I could pick it up with one hand. So all I'm doing now is I'm nailing in some roofing nails. They have a large flat head. I'm going to be putting on a piece of 4x8 wire remesh. It's a heavy, probably like double the gauge of a coat hanger wire mesh panel. I think some people call them cattle panels. And I'm putting these nails in here to allow me to bow the cattle panel or the wire remesh across the top of this frame. There's lots of different ways you can do this. This is what I had kicking around. The great thing about the shingle nail, a roofing nail, it's got this large flat head, and you can sort of hook it underneath the wire on the side of the cattle panel. Now I think, because this wouldn't be a problem for you if you were using actual milled lumber, because this wasn't perfectly true, perfectly flat sort of thing, perfectly plain. Which I could have done if I'd put more energy into it, but geez, it's going to be outside for 5-6 years and then it's going to rot, so I'm not going to kill myself here. The point is to get it together quickly and have it last, long enough. So I think because of that, I think the middle nail was just wasn't grabbing. Just trying to hook the little bit of wire underneath the nail head so it'll stay in place. If I'd used fencing nails, it's like a giant staple that you can hammer in with a hammer. It would have been a lot easier for this, and I actually do use those later on as we go, and you'll see what I mean as we go. Anyway, all I did was just pull this nail out and put it back in. Sorry for the shadowing there, it's just the way it I only had a short amount of time to film this, and I just set the camera up and let it go while I was working on it. That's just the time I had to work on it. So I just made the nail a little bit higher. I also changed the position because it was against one of the vertical wires, because you want the cattle panel to be the exact same length as your frame. This frame is 4x8, but when I say 4x8, it's 8 feet long exactly, but the width is actually slightly less than 4. I think it was probably 40 inches or 39 inches, the outside edge, because if it was 48, it might have been, I can't remember what it was exactly, maybe 43 or 42, I'd have to go measure, but anyway, it can't be 48 because you won't get that bow, right? It has to be narrower than the actual dimension of the cattle panel, or it won't bow up like that. You won't get that effect, right? So that's what I did there. I just hooked it underneath the nails. And now the next step is to put a lot more nails in there. Now you could continue to use roofing nails to do this, but I had some of these from when I put the fence around my garden. These fencing nails, or I don't know what they're called, fencing staples or something like that. They're kind of a pain to nail in, and I actually would have used all shingle nails for this. You just put one on the inside, one on the out, sort of thing. But I have these lying around. I got no use for them, and they're galvanized and last forever. I've got when I put my fence in, I didn't know how much of those things to buy, so I bought like I don't know, 2 pounds or 3 pounds of them, not knowing really how much that. Anyway, I got tons of these things left over. I just try to use them up, which is my general approach in the garden anyway, right? Is just use stuff up. So that's the general approach. I think about every 2 spaces I had to put one of those in, and that would seem to give it the nice shape and hold the mesh true and avoid bowing or bending or it just being bent out of shape. So I'm moving along. I sped it up here just because I'm just going around, every 2 spaces, the 2 squares. I'm tacking one of these things in and just working my way all around trying to keep it. And it's amazing to me. I mean, I didn't use any sort of square or anything to put this thing together. I made sure all my pieces of wood were cut exactly the same length, and then I just nailed it together. I think I used screws. I think I used 3-inch Robinson head screws, number 2 Robinson, for those that want to know. I just eyeballed the whole thing, and the ultimate test of how square something is to actually attach something that is square to your square thing. And boy, it might have been off like half an inch, the whole thing, in terms of it being trapezoided. So I was quite pleased with that. It worked out just fine. For just eyeballing it is amazing how close you can get when you eyeball things. Anyway, we got it all together here, and that's the sort of final project. I think I tip it over here just to show you how sound it is and how much, even though it's a flimsy wire bow, it's when you make that dome shape, that arch shape, it's just amazing how strong it is once you've got it all attached together. Right? You notice that it wasn't, it can handle that, which means it can handle having some snow on it and some ice on it and stuff like that. All right, so moving along now. Attaching the plastic. It was a somewhat windy day. Actually, I edited it out, but at some point in filming this, my whole tripod blew over and the $400 camera hit the ground. Anyway, it still works. Kind of handy to have a second person around to help you for this sort of thing if you've got that. But I try to do things on my own just because it's better for instructional purposes. For those watching as to how would I do this on my own? Well, how I'm doing it is one way you do this on your own. So of course I've got my back to the wind so it wouldn't blow it up into my face. If you're working in wind, which I am always working in wind, which is why I often do these voiceovers, and which is why I had to do the voiceover for this video. When you're attaching the plastic, start in the middle. Okay, a lot of people don't. It's intuitive to want to start at the corners or something like that, but if you want to get a nice tight, attachment when you're doing plastic, you start it at the middle. I learned to use this sort of stuff. I put myself through university in the construction business, and if you do a new construction on an interior of a house, of course you have to put vapor barrier on every single exterior wall. And so these old guys would teach me how to do this sort of thing, and I'd pick it up and try to start in the corner, and he's like, "What the hell are you doing, buddy? You don't do that," sort of thing. So you start in the middle and you work your way from there if you want it nice and tight. So that's kind of what I'm doing there. I mean, once you get one end of it done, you can be kind of lazy about how you go about doing the other end. But at least to get one side of it started, you see how I'm going back and forth from side to side. That's just so you tighten it a bit on one side, then you tighten it from the other side, and that seems to keep it fairly true, and you get a nice tight attachment of the plastic, which is what you want, because you don't want the wind grabbing it. You don't want parts of it sagging and gathering water and different materials and stuff like that, right? You want it on as tight as a drum, or as tight as you can get it, so that it just stands up to the weather better and stuff like that. And the great thing about this plastic, for those that have never used it, the 6mm poly, it's relatively cheap. You get a big roll of it and it lasts a long time. And one of these will last multiple years. I've got some of my garden now that are now, I don't know, 3 years now. We'll see how long they last. But even if they start to, some of them will wear a bit at certain points of contact. And you can just put like that Tyvek tape, exterior sheathing tape over it. And that stuff seems to do wonders for holding it together. So here we are, just about done, I think. And I've sped the camera up. You notice in some of these, if I seem to be moving with incredible speed and vigor, and I seem to be superhuman, I'm not. I just sped it up so the video wasn't quite as long. So a lot of these I'm going like 150% speed. So that's why I'm sort of moving so fast. It's not because my vegetables are giving me incredible vitality. So there we go. That part's done, and now we got to do the ends. So I'm trimming this off a little bit because it's a bit over. I think it's nice to have like maybe a 2-inch overhang at either end, because it almost makes like a, I don't know, like a just same way you have a roof. A roof sort of extends beyond the vertical wall of a house. It just allows better, sort of containment, right? Sort of thing. You won't have water getting in and ice and snow getting in and bending and stuff like that. It'll sort of shed water a little bit better. Be cool to rig up some sort of what do you call it? A gutter around the outer edge and have that gather water and bring it into. The one thing I don't like about these things is that you have to manually water the garden. For those of you that don't follow me all the time, I really don't water my garden for the month of July, August, September, October. At some point in July, I stop watering my garden. My seedlings have good deep roots, and I don't need to water at all. So it's a real pain. We have a really good rain outside, but because I got these domes on, I have to water. I'd love to figure out some system for that, aside from just rigging up an irrigation system in my garden, which I don't feel I need to do. Anyway, so that's the thing. You staple on the bottom and then cut the sort of half circle. And there's probably lots of different ways to put ends on. I've tried putting styrofoam on the ends, but it's just such a flimsy material, and it also doesn't let the light through. This seems to work. Now, I sort of tried pre-drilling this. It's a great little tool. You just take a branch of a tree, jam a nail in it, and then through whatever means you have available, cut the end of the nail off and sharpen it somehow, like with a file, and you get a nice little awl. I pre-drilled this whole thing, and it turns out the holes were all in the wrong place, and I was like, oh, that was in the wrong spot. So that's not the right way to do it. The right way to do it is to pull the thing up and poke a hole. And I'm using zip ties here, just these little cheap 3-inch zip ties, or I think they're 3 inches long, that you get in a dollar store. I mean, you can use string, you can use twist tags. I mean, there's all kinds of different things you can use, and there's probably many different ways. You could use tape, I suppose, to do this. But this 6mm poly is so sort of solidly built that I find even poking a hole through it, it sort of works. And I got this idea watching guys make birch bark canoes, where they poke holes in the birch bark using the exact same sort of tool, and instead of using twist tags or zip ties there to fasten the the walls of the canoe to the gunnels and various parts of that construction, they use spruce roots, which of course I'm sure you could use it for this if you wanted to be really earthy, but yeah, I'm using the zip ties instead of the spruce roots. If you've ever done anything with spruce roots, they're incredibly useful like this, but anyway, I digress. So that's the general idea. Try to keep that that part of the construction as straight and flat and true as you can, and just work your way along. Also, I'm not attaching the top plastic to this side. I'm sort of folding. It's hard to see from this camera angle, but I'm folding the top layer back a little bit, getting it out of the way, and I'm attaching the side piece onto the wire. And then when I'm done attaching the whole end piece, I just move that little overhang part of the top part, the main plastic sheet. I fold that back over, and it sort of has a little bit of an overhang, a bit of a lip there. So that way you're not compromising the integrity of the top piece, which you want to have the most integrity. And I find these sort of, I mean, of all the I've got, I think this is my fourth or fifth one that I have in the garden. And I only ever had one of these, those end pieces come loose, and I tied that on with string. Anyway, here I am just walking away with this thing. You carry it the same way you'd carry a canoe, and off I go to the garden to put this thing in place. So here I am at the garden, and I got a bed here that it's got a little bit of mulch, but not that much, and it is frozen solid. So some of the other ones, they've had those things on them since late December. But this one was just left. I didn't even put a good mulch on it. And it's a shame because I got 2 bags of mulch that I meant to throw on this, but I didn't get around to it, and they just froze solid. There's a big hump in the ground here, frozen stuff, that wouldn't let the the hoop house sort of lie flat, so I just, because I had a hammer, I just went at it with the hammer to get things, to make her fit, as they say. So that's it fitting pretty good. So now all I'm going to do is put a string across the top to keep it from blowing away, because if I don't tie things down here, everything blows away. Previous videos I've done a string at either end. I found just one over the middle seems to do a perfectly fine job. So I'm just sticking a roofing nail or one of those fencing nails. I can't remember where I stuck it. I think actually it was one of those fencing nails. And it's got some string here, and I'm just going to tie the string across the top using the trucker's hitch knot to do the fastening of the two ends together. I've got a video on knots if you want to watch that. I probably made it around this time of year last year. So if you look at February 2018, you'll see a video I did on different knots. And that's the one I'm using here called the trucker's hitch. Anyway, that's the idea. These are a great way to thaw your garden out, especially if you had an insane winter like we've had here. So I hope you found that interesting. And if you did, please like, share, subscribe. Check out my podcast, maritimegardening.com. And until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden, and thanks for watching.